What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Build in El Salvador channel. Today, we got an excellent show for you. This is what we do once a week. It is a weekly El Salvador roundup where Luis and I go over a bunch of headlines that El Salvador has generated and discuss its impact and our thoughts on it. So welcome. Luis, what do you got for us today?
Well, we got a lot of things, every week things happen in El Salvador. We have different developments, either from the government and from all sides, but one of the highlights of the week for me was the announcement. We had some feedback, I think. Was the announcement of a universal education program for high school students that Bukele just announced it in an event on Saturday, I think. And it was very well welcomed by the people because education here is something that is a pending debt on the government. So people were really excited about it. And
what do you mean by that? Pending debt? Like, is it something that, a promise that they've made and that they need to continue forward with?
Yeah. They've been trying to. I mean, what I say is there's a necessity of have good workers here for the challenges and the new industries and technologies that are coming to El Salvador. For example, AI, crypto, or whatever. So, and a lot of challenges of people graduating from high school and they go to the US, they migrate, they don't find educational options here. So El Salvador is doing these efforts. And trying to make it in a way that works for the current times. That is, it has. I'm sorry, I'm losing the in translation what I wanted to say, but yeah, that's what the government is doing, trying to innovate into education rather than going to the traditional way of building schools and all that.
All right, so to summarize here, education has been lacking in El Salvador, especially higher education. What many people did here in El Salvador is if they wanted to receive a college level degree and education, they went to the States and did their college over there. Actually, I know several people in this housing complex who are from El Salvador who actually did that. They went to like Florida, went to USF and or UCF, and then got their degree and then came back here and are working. So it seems like Bukele, one of his promises was to improve the educational circumstances happening here in El Salvador. And, it looks like they're making progress with that here. Can you go over the details of this educational program?
Yeah, the thing is that there's only, I think, one public university here in El Salvador, which is the National University of El Salvador. And it's not enough for the amount of high schoolers that, they're coming out from high school trying to keep up with their education. So he announced an basically universal education program for students that get, high school students that get good grades. That means over 7 out of 10 points on their school grades, and he is gonna make the students go through a small preparation course, and they have to do social work as well to be part of this education program that will allow them to study different careers that might be university careers or technical ones. So that it's going to prep them to the challenges in their adulthood. So what we know until now is that this is going to be for everyone that wants to apply for it. So that's what we know for now. Bukele had a beautiful event surrounded by thousands of children, teenagers, and he announced this. We don't know when this is gonna be
take effect,
but he just announced it, and it was very welcome.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, one of the main complaints I hear from people here is that the government doesn't focus enough on education. My perspective is a little bit different. I think that government run education, from what we've seen in the United States and so forth, isn't always the best, but I guess it starts the process of developing a higher educational industry over here that allows students to now move up, have social mobility upwards, and become an expert or develop a profession in a degree, and get a degree. I'm stuttering over here. uh and find a job that way. We'll see. I'm
This program is part of the territorial control plan that's related to the gangs crackdown, because this plan is divided in 6 phases, where the first phases were about security, imprisoning the criminals and all that, and the latest phases are about repairing the social fabric with different initiatives that involve infrastructure, education, and basically healing the society of the decades of darkness that they live and they went through it. So we are now at the phase of education, and that's maybe the reason why Bukele didn't focus on education in the last few years, just trying to attack the main problem, which was insecurity. So now he's moving forward with education. So
yeah, I got another thought there. Well, first of all, yeah, you got to build some type of foundation of safety in order to build upwards, right? You got to have the civilizational layer intact, right? And for that, you need a safe society, and you need to establish some type of order. In terms of like government running education, again, like I'm not the biggest fan of that, but it's interesting. This is a small country, and the way I see it, it's almost run similar to like a startup, although there is like a democratic process. But in terms of building it back up, there is very much like this startup society feel to it. And so, in terms of my preconceived notions around government education, it would be interesting to see if this turns out a different way than I would expect. Usually, with government services, what ends up happening is it gets watered down or corrupted, and it doesn't turn out to be the best quality. But it would be interesting to see how this evolves in terms of having a smaller, more manageable country and focusing resources towards education, especially with a forward-thinking attitude. How education here will transpire. I know just with like Bitcoin education and what Stacey Herbert is doing with Kubo Plus, I believe it is. It looks like they're taking a very pragmatic approach to education, and looking to provide world-class resources, even bringing in like Bitcoin developers to teach it and so forth. So, I wonder if my ideas about government run education or government structured education will change based on what El Salvador is doing.
Yeah, Bukele made emphasis on the fact that not everyone is capable or able to study something difficult. I mean, everyone has different abilities and talents. So he mentioned that some students might want to study art or creativity or design stuff, and others want to go with engineering and physics and mathematics, or others will like to go on technology, AI, development of, and it's nice to see him acknowledge that, because you will think that a leader will like to consider equal everyone, like with equal capabilities, and it's not the case. So like you said, he has a very pragmatical approach. He knows where to allocate the resources and have different options for the big amount of students that are here and want to pick different life lanes, So yeah.
Cool. What else we got?
Another interesting thing we had last week, we talked on the previous edition of El Salvador Weekly Roundup about the downtown historical center reforms, where they were moving out the merchants and all that. So the president learned that in the last year, several major offices they were increasing the taxes and the price of permits of to put a business in in these districts all around the country. So he ordered everyone to take down the taxes and these fees to how it was before May. I think May 1st, 2024. That's when the new governments of municipalities took charge of their position. So everyone is following up. And he basically threatened the mayors to be prosecuted or accused for extortion if they didn't take back the taxes and the fees. So that was funny, and I like how this maybe correlates to the libertarian understanding of taxes, which basically can be perceived as extortion or theft. So he's saying that the small and medium business need the support of the government and not to be, chased with taxes and crazy fees.
Yeah. Well, anytime there's red tape, and that includes taxes and fees and permits and so forth like that, right? It's a hindrance to developing out your business. I think I saw Murph's Life actually tweet some stuff about this where he's trying to develop out his projects and has his ideas, but he's running against permitting issues. And he's kind of been making it known on Twitter in order to maybe get some help. And maybe that's what inspired Nayib Bukele to actually tweet this out. That would be interesting. But yeah, one of the things you look at when you want to develop out a project or build a house, like, what are the laws? What are the fees? What are the red tape that I'm going to run into? And many times in Latin America, I'm not saying El Salvador, I don't know how it works here specifically in El Salvador, but I know that they all have their individual municipalities that they got to work with, right? And apparently these municipalities have been increasing their fees and so forth and making it harder. But like in Latin America in general, I think it suffers from not having standard, and fees that, like a clear process in developing out a business. And that uncertainty, scares a lot of people away. And so what you end up having is an underdeveloped country where, if you opened it up, removed the red tape, made whatever process, because I think, the older I get, the less I move away from my like pure libertarian roots. I think that localism is kind of the way to go. I think that the local municipalities should have some type of process in place for development, right? Some type of standards in order to make sure that there's some type of urban planning and making sure that people, whatever they're developing, somehow benefits the surrounding society or somehow is built up to some codes and standards. Because, if you're trying to, increase the value of your municipality, right? You want things built with some type of quality behind it. And so I think there's a place for that. But sometimes it goes too far. Sometimes it becomes corrosive and corruptive. And, city officials are fallible human beings and they end up putting too much of a burden to the point where they scare development away. And I think that's kind of what Bukele was mentioning here. Is that right?
Yeah.
If we want economic development to happen in this country, we need to
Yeah, you need to support the small merchants and business owners to enable the country to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main complaints of these small merchants is that where are the tax cuts for us, who are basically, we are the engine of the country. And instead you have these tax cuts for corporations that want to come here and settle here, and that's okay. But also the locals need that support from the government. And every municipality, they have their standards, they have their permits, their process, but it's hard for the central government to track down each one of those processes and to make it like a standard for the country. It's like a task, that an extra responsibility to put them to the central government. So I guess Bukele is calling out everyone to put their things in order, make things easier, and
Yeah, and then typically what you want to do is get away from centrally controlled systems, but in the terms of like removing red tape and then using, whatever federal power there is to do that, I mean, seems hard to argue with that, right? If it's actually removing power from the government. But I think there's a risk there of centralizing control or centralizing power, and then you get away from less localized management. And like you said, the further away you move from the local jurisdictions, the harder it is to manage and track all the important things. And so there's a fine balance there that needs to be created. But when I hear stuff like this, it's definitely encouraging, and it makes me think that if they can find a solution here, it sounds like the administration is on the right track as far as like the thought process, removing red tape, allowing businesses to flourish. And if they can continue that path and find a solution, then the prospects for El Salvador look really nice, really good.
Yeah, I agree. And, definitely the government needs to be more empathetic with small merchants, especially when you had an economy that developed under informality for decades. You had these street vendors or people who had a physical business, but they inherited from their families and they never put their paperwork in order or whatever. Like, you can go hard against these people if previously you didn't have the conditions for them to be regulated and have everything in place in order. So you had to given some time, being flexible with them.
That goes back to like the markets in the historic center, right?
Yeah.
So they had these markets that were just chaos, loud, obnoxious. You had to, sometimes I drove through it. Man, that was one of the craziest experiences that I ever had. And I thought they were like a nuisance. They were dirty. There's litter everywhere. And they have since done away with them, right? But they're providing an avenue for those merchants then to also continue to run their stands somewhere else. Is that right?
Yeah, they have they have built a few markets, a few buildings for them to settle up in an orderly way.
Yeah. And here's the thing, that beautifies the city, that makes the historic center more cleaner. It makes it more walkable. And so that's something an initiative that makes sense. And this is where I think that localized control of, certain aspects of society make total sense, especially if it's to improve like the human condition and the culture and the society, right?
Yeah, and you're definitely improving the conditions for them, the working conditions, the health, and, in general is win-win for them. But you definitely need to have an historical center that reflects the values and the importance of respecting your country's history. And I'm not 100% against street vendors. Maybe I romanticize it a little bit. I like it a little bit. But definitely you need to put things in order to make
Well, to be clear, this wasn't street vendors, right? It was like literally a whole market, like both sides of the street taken up right by these markets. That was literally also a road that people drove through.
It was a market in the street.
It was a market in the street. Yeah, this is where I say some order, I think, needs to be established in order for, a society to move into more of a higher standard of living.
And talking about higher standards, we are going to move to the next topic. The national soccer team of El Salvador sucks.
Damn. I didn't say that.
Well, I did.
I know people go crazy over soccer, so.
No, they know. Salvadorians know for a fact that the soccer team has been going through some... no, this is the beach soccer.
Oh, beach soccer?
Yeah, I'm talking about the football field. Yeah, this one. So they welcome a new coach for the national team, and they are expecting to take the national team to the World Cup.
Wow.
That is gonna be made on 2026 in Canada, US, and Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be a fun event in a couple years. Well, next year actually. This guy, I think his name is yeah, his nickname Hernan Darío Gomez, aka Bolillo.
So is he a famous soccer coach or something that now has?
Well, he kind of he put Colombia and Ecuador selections into the World Cup in previous years, so he has certain and Panama as well. So he has the record, a good record of taking selections teams to the World Cup. So now they hired him for El Salvador, and Bukele welcomed him. And it's funny because I've been seeing the training seasons with sessions with this new coach, and the first thing he said, like, these players eat too much pupusas.
Oh yeah.
No, he didn't say that, but he said that they were out of shape. So that's one of the first thing to work on.
Look, man, pupusas, like, I don't want to speak bad about pupusas, man. This is like the staple food over here in El Salvador, but you can see the effects on it on people, right? And so diet is a big thing. And I think that a coach that recognizes that, I think Argentina, for instance, like they flew a bunch of meat, right, to the World Cup because they wanted their players eating quality food. And I think it has a lot to do with your performance. And so that's a good sign in my perspective.
Yeah, that's the traditional Argentinian asado, like meat, high quality meat, and that's all they eat. And
speaking of that, El Salvador needs to get some high quality meat here. I don't know how they can do it, but if they can, man, this country needs it. So that's just my 2 cents there.
A whole bunch of products need to increase the quality,
Yeah.
But we're working on it, like step by step, need to raise the standards on everything. So it's going to take some time, but these kind of initiatives, they show that there are a lot of people working behind this stuff. So it's good to see.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a sign, right? Like, look, they're trying to improve everything. Like Bukele is operating at a very high level here and like really rapidly, from the Bitcoin law and attracting Max and Stacy and all these other Bitcoin projects over here like Tether, to now creating apparently the world's best AI law. And there's Brian Rummel on Twitter who's saying that, like, if you're creating an AI company, the place to do it is in El Salvador, to creating higher educational standards and systems in place so education can improve, all the way to improving the soccer team. So like, and these are all things that create national pride and keep people together. And El Salvador, I saw this meme about El Salvador the other day. It was like, one of these memes where the dude's just walking in all like confident, flamboyant, like just I'm the guy. And the meme was like El Salvadorans when people are talking about their country, like basically now saying that there's a renewed sense of pride. Like people are looking to El Salvador as a country of respect, as opposed to what it's been known for in the past.
Definitely. What else? Yeah, sometimes I feel like people go too hard on Bukele when he doesn't tweet for a month or doesn't make a special announcement for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And they go like, what are you doing? We need more. We need more things done. And it's like, there are so many things to be done that it's going to take some time. You got to get it, understand that.
Well, that's like,
it's going fast, dude. Like,
yeah, which is also, there's this motto: go fast, break things, and kind of learn as you go. So I would imagine some things are not going to work. Like, for instance, the Chivo wallet and, what happened there and stuff like that. So yeah, going fast has sometimes its failures, but in general, it pushes you on the right direction. But like, you also have a country that you need to manage. This isn't like something that you can just turn around right away. And it's also a democracy where you have all types of different interests that you have to consider. And so the idea that you can just turn this big ship around completely in a matter of months is kind of unrealistic. And so you got to give it time. And so yeah, I see El Salvador as like 20-year, like the rejuvenation of El Salvador and its ascendance into a first world country as a 20-year, 30-year project.
Definitely. So
but but soccer's important, so it's good that
it's super important. We can follow up with the beach soccer team as well. They classified for the beach soccer World Cup last week. They won the US team on the semifinals and Guatemala on the finals. So I guess the beach soccer team from El Salvador does better than actual national soccer team. These guys are legends where they come from. They come from all these areas in the beach, in the coast, from El Salvador, small villages, remote towns, and they're really great. And it's they really imprint a sense of pride into the people. So yeah, the people are very proud about them.
What did they do?
They classify for the beach soccer World Cup.
Man, I didn't even know there was something like that. All right, let's go El Salvador.
Man, we are in all the fronts: surf, football, beach soccer, tennis as well. There was a tennis player that he goes into these top tournaments.
Okay. And then I think there's this golfer, Wilbur, also. I don't know if you know him, but apparently that's an interesting story. He kind of grew up in a poor part of El Salvador. And, I think his dad worked for a country club and he took his kid there and eventually learned how to play golf. And now he's one of the top ranked golf players here, someone who didn't even wasn't supposed to have access to a golf course.
Right.
Now becoming one of the top ranked golfers. Anyways, anything else?
What else? We have beyond that. Okay, we want to talk about the prisons things. Not today.
Well, okay, let's just talk about it. So there's news like the US sent a bunch of prisoners here. I have mixed feelings about this, but it's news, so let's hear about it.
Yeah, it's a sensitive topic. There are a lot of opinions about it. I don't have a memory of anything like this happening in history, in recent history. And it is one country paying another to held prisoners in their territory. So basically, the US sent 2,038 members of a Venezuelan gang.
238.
238 members of the Venezuelan gang, and they were transferred to the terrorist confinement center with the other local gangs. So what Bukele says is that the US is paying a low fee per prisoner, but a high one for El Salvador. So El Salvador is making a profit out of this, custodying these bad people into their prison. So this is another thing that
well, look, there's a little bit of a history of this. I didn't expect El Salvador to go down this route of becoming like a penal colony, but like Australia, I think that used to be like a British penal colony, and where they send all their prisoners to Australia. What else we got? We got like Alcatraz, right? And so it's a weird rebrand from my perspective, to turn this to a for-profit prison system over here in El Salvador. I don't know what to make of it yet. But obviously what Bukele is doing is extending all the expertise that this country has developed from rounding up the gangs and like really violent criminals, and taking that and now making it scale to the point where he's like, hey, we have excess capacity And if you got prisoners that you need taken care of, send them over here because we've built these prisons specifically to house really bad people. So, another place, Guantanamo Bay, right? Like these are all instances of something like this happening. Again, like I don't know. I'm not really sure what this means or what to make of it, but it's news.
Yeah, one thing for sure that I could say is like the US has verified the El Salvador prison system. I mean, if they're sending these guys here, it's because they trust them, the prison system here. So it has to be really good and maybe the best in the world. And another thing is like, maybe we are being too naive into thinking how the prison system works. For example, in the US, I understand that it's based on private contractors as well, that they run the prisons and, they manage it and they make contracts with the government to run the prisons. I don't know if I'm wrong, but
yeah, I think the U.S. has 5% of the world's population and 25% of the world's prisoners, right? There's a huge prison industrial complex in the U.S.
Yeah, and there are incentives to put people into prison for any petty crime because
Yes.
you are charging the government for it.
And so this is where my hesitation comes in is like, okay, are we, is there an incentive being created here to just arrest people and put them in prisons? But here's what I will say about what I've seen from this administration and their prison system is that it's more also of a rehabilitation system. Yeah, okay, you got violent criminal offenders, you got people who did really horrible things that are locked down, and that there's a prison system for that. But then there's also a prison system that actually takes, people with, I guess, minor offenses and then like rehabilitates them, teaches them skills, shows them.
Yeah, have you seen that? They have the program for prisoners to work and manufacture different stuff and clean up the streets or support in different activities.
Yes, so that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But those are the normal criminals, not terrorists like this MS-13 or...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. When you have those type of people here who are dangerous, who literally are Satanists, who are... their whole motive now is just to destroy and to kill and to create evil in the world, right? You got to deal with those people on a different level. And so you got to build the facilities for that. You got to train the staff to deal with that. And if you have excess capacity, right, it just makes sense to then say, hey, listen, we got this excess capacity. We've cleaned up the gangs. Now, hey, to the rest of the world, we're open for business. If you got criminals and you need that, because there's all this foundational work that goes into building facilities and training staff for these type of criminals. So
it's a huge investment, and you need very specialized people to deal with these guys, and a lot of processes to check that
facilities are secure, and there's all this, like he says here, it's $200 million a year to run this facility. So okay, cool. We'll leave it at that. I mean, I think this was a good show. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it was.
Thanks for putting this together. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Last thing, we have the Digital Asset Summit.
What is that?
April is a meeting of fintech people, central bankers, investors coming to El Salvador on April 29th. 2025. It's organized by the Digital Assets National Commission. It's an official entity. And we have that happening beyond the scope of Bitcoin only thing.
Yeah, so El Salvador is trying to position itself as like this digital assets friendly country, apparently talking to the guys from Nodeman, Carlos and Jose. It's ranked up there with like Switzerland and Dubai. Is it Dubai? I don't know what other jurisdiction, but it's one of the top 3 jurisdictions for digital assets. And so this is just another confirmation, look, they're putting on a digital asset summit here. And this is where you're like tokenizing real estate and stuff like that.
All that.
So
yeah, compliance, anti-money laundering regulations.
Again, I don't have much of opinion here, but it's interesting to see the developments that are happening. And again, just another point that El Salvador is becoming a international country.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna be looking forward to this event, and
Are you going?
yeah, probably.
Okay, cool.
Probably.
Let us know what happens.
Okay, sure, I will. Okay,
All right,
we're done
everyone.
now.
Have a fantastic